They said the village of Black Hollow vanished overnight. No war, no fire, no bodies, just gone. It had once been a small, thriving community deep in the woods, stone cottages with thatched roofs. Cobbled paths between them, lanterns flickering under misty skies. The people were kind but secretive, clinging to traditions long forgotten by the outside world. They never welcomed strangers, and no one left. That is, until this year. A traveler named Daniel found himself walking down a tree-lined path leading to the village. His car had broken down miles away, and he was desperate for shelter. As twilight began to fall, he saw a cottage up ahead with smoke curling from its chimney and knocked on the door. An old woman answered, her eyes wide and pale, her hands trembling. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "It's the night of the hallowing." Daniel thought it was a local superstition, something silly. But as midnight drew near, he heard chains dragging metal moans. Then, looking around, he realized every door in the village had locked tight. The windows had curtains drawn across them. The lanterns in the square had been extinguished one by one until every corner was shrouded in darkness. A heavy silence swept in like a fog, muffling the sound of his own breathing. He could feel the eyes of the villagers on him, watching, waiting. And then the bells began to ring. They weren't church bells. They were much deeper, hollow, echoing from the forest, impossibly far away and yet terrifyingly near. Daniel's blood ran cold as the sound reverberated through his bones. The branches overhead stirred, though there was no wind, and from the edge of his vision he saw them emerge. Faceless figures robed in soot and smoke, gliding silently through the streets, their edges blurring at the periphery like smoke. They paused at each door, sniffing the air, searching for anything alive, anything that moved. Daniel ran, stumbling through the darkness, desperate to escape the village. He tried to retrace his steps to find the way out, but every path led him back to the village square. Each house he tried to hide in was locked tight, the windows barred. He pounded on doors, screaming for help, but his cries echoed unanswered in the suffocating quiet, and the figures were closing in, their whispers like dry leaves underfoot. He could feel their gazes boring into him, their presence seeping into his skin, draining the warmth from his blood. Then he turned and ran, crashing through the undergrowth, the forest suddenly his only refuge. If the stories were true, if the legends whispered around dying campfires held any truth, the woods were just as dangerous. There were things that dwelt there that should have stayed buried in the earth, creatures that stalked the trees and feasted on fear. But he didn't care. He had to try. As he ran, the bells chimed again, and the trees around him stirred, as if in response, their leaves rustling like disturbed whispers. A low growl rumbled in his ears, vibrating in his bones. Something large and predatory was watching him from the trees, its eyes gleaming like embers in the darkness. Adrenaline surged through him, urging him on. He burst into a clearing and gasped. Before him stood the church, its bell tower twisting upward like a spine, gnarled and skeletal against the night sky. And at the top, a gaping window, like a mouth, beckoned to him, promising an escape from the nightmare. But as he reached out to climb the ladder set into the tower, the ground behind him gave way. He fell, tumbling down a hidden well, the latter clattering to the ground above. Blinking away the stars, he found himself in a subterranean labyrinth of tunnels. Damp and dark, the air thick with the scent of decay. The walls were lined with niches, each one containing a bone-chilling reminder of those who'd come before him, skulls grinning in mockery, femurs stark and silent. And at the end of the passage, a single eye socket stared into his own, wreathed in shadow. They say if you walk too far into the woods and find yourself in a place where the trees are too still and the sky too quiet, you might see the village again, but don't go in. Because Black Hollow sleeps now, and it's always hungry when it wakes.